welcome everybody to episode 2 of Blockchain and Aviation. Hey, today is Business Case Wednesday. Today we're going to be focusing on business cases for blockchain and aviation. And I have a guest with us today who is doing real live implementations of blockchain. And we're going to be talking about terminology again to make sure that we all understand terminology. We are going to be talking about business cases, and we're going to be answering some questions. And I'm going to be looking forward to having your questions online, with us. So let me just jump right in and introduce to you my co-host. Here I have with us today, Gabriel Schultz. Gabriel, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Gabriel, I'm glad to have you with me again. Can you just tell people where you're located? People always like to know where we're located when we're on these broadcasts.
I agree. Right now I'm in the Seattle location. So if you know anything about Seattle, over near the Ballard area. So
fantastic. All right. Okay. It's good to have you with us. Hey, listen, Gabriel, we have a guest with us today. And the interesting thing about our guest is that he has a long history of IT and entrepreneurship. And he's with a company that's actually called Real Variable. And the company Real Variable offers blockchain solutions. And so we've asked him to come and join us and be part of the broadcast today in order to be able to bring his expertise and to share with all of you out there his knowledge on blockchain. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in right now. And so here we have LV with us today. Good evening, LV.
Hi, good morning, Mark. Good morning, Gabriel.
Yeah, very good. LV, I wondered if you could just tell people where you're located at so they can kind of know where you're currently coming to us from.
I'm joining from Hyderabad, India.
Hyderabad. Okay, perfect. All right, excellent. Hey, listen, let's jump in, and I want to just have you introduce yourself. People always want to know who you are and what do you do. LV, could you just tell people who you are and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Lakshmi Venkat Vemuganti. I'm one of the co-founders and Chief Technology Officer at Real Variable. So co-founded Real Variable about 5 years ago. Overall, about 20 plus years in the enterprise solutions industry, implemented many solutions across the world.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, LV. Hey, for those of you watching today, I just wanted to let you know that in our first broadcast, we just had amazing participation. I think we had about 3,000 views, of the broadcast, and we had a couple hundred people that were online during the broadcast. We had all kinds of questions, and I just always love it when you provide, let us know who you are and where you're coming to us from. And I'm just wondering if you could help us out by sharing this broadcast. I am passionate about digital and digital transformation in aviation, and I need you and your help for us to be able to get the word out. And I would appreciate it if you would share the broadcast. And also, there's a comment box down there, and it's always fun to know where people are watching from. I don't know, we have people watching from 20 or 30 countries on Monday, this week. And if you're watching right now, I would appreciate it if you would just put your, put a comment down there in the comment box and just tell us where you're watching from, and we'll give you a little shout out and recognize you like we did last time. And also, let me just remind you that we are going to be taking live Q&A, and we had a lot of questions, but last time they came in toward the end of the broadcast, and we actually didn't have enough time to completely answer them. So I wanted to just take a moment while you're putting in there your location and where you're watching from, and remind you that we're in the middle of doing a series right now called Blockchain and Aviation, and we've committed to doing an 8-week series, and this is actually episode 2. And the series is going to have on Mondays something I call Ideation Mondays. We're going to be talking about innovation and things that are happening in aviation with respect to blockchain. And then on Wednesdays, we're doing something called Business Case Wednesdays, where I'm bringing people in. We're going to talk about business cases and the application of blockchain in aviation. And then from there, we're going to be doing something called Product Showcases on Fridays. And we're going to actually show some products. Hey, let's recognize some of the people that are coming in now. It's always fun to do that. We have Monica Bada. She's coming in from Montreal. I met her, I think, for the first time in Seattle a while back, and I thank you for joining us. We have users coming in from Hamburg. Unfortunately, it doesn't say your name. I'm sorry. Welcome, Hamburg. And then let's see, we have Sven Hoffner. He's getting ready for takeoff again. Thanks for joining us, Sven. And looks like he's joining us from Germany. We have Kieran. Hey, LV, do you know Kieran?
We are colleagues.
Yeah, LV and Kieran work together at Real Variable. Welcome, Kieran. Glad to have you with us. And we have Ismail coming to us from Istanbul. Welcome, Istanbul. Let's see, we have Rena, and Rena's coming to us from Toronto. I think last time she said that she's studying blockchain right now, and we really look forward to having any knowledge that people are bringing. Richard Scarborough, he's a frequent visitor of our broadcast. Richard, thanks for jumping in. We have somebody that joined us from Warwick, Rhode Island. Boy, it really just continues all over the world here. And Liverpool, we have Abdullah joining us from Liverpool, UK. Welcome, UK. And we have this stranger here. This is actually my daughter, Rachel. She works for DreamWorks. She's involved in digital in another way. I'm involved in digital and aviation, and she is an animator. And so welcome, Rachel. We have Shivam coming to us from India. Shivam, thanks for joining us. Great to have you. And let's see, we have Rena here again. And let me see, we have, Jean-Marc from Skythread. Skythread is in Irving, California. And they're actually going to be a guest on one of our, very prominent in the blockchain industry and aviation. And they're going to be a guest on one of our future programs. So great. Listen, thank you all so much for just getting me an idea of who's watching out there. And remember, I need some questions. So please submit your questions, and we're going to do our best to answer them. Hey, listen, as we get started here, I always think it's really good for people to get to know our guests and our guest speakers. And I'm going to kick this off by asking LV a little bit about himself and about his background. LV, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this subject and what brought you to the place where, you were just involved in blockchain? We'd like for people just to know a little bit more about you and your background and what brought you to this journey.
Thanks, Mark. So about 20 years of my experience in the IT industry, out of which 4.5 years in the blockchain, but the previous 16 years went in terms of implementing enterprise solutions, whether it is integrations, whether it is ERP, whether it is data warehouses, analytics, across the entire globe, except South America. I did not visit that continent yet. One thing that we have seen is that organizations have invested quite a lot in terms of creating the internal solutions, which could talk to the tier 1 customers or tier 1 suppliers, or let's say tier 1 partners. But for them to be able to get any kind of information from the next years, it is just impossible because they have to go through these walled gardens, right? So that is when we were looking at warehouses are there, data lakes are there. How about creating data networks? But for us to be able to create the data networks, you need a sound technology that is running behind, which can provide the digital data trust, which can provide immutability, which can provide encryption, which can provide a lot of security. That is where blockchain we saw, and that is a wonderful fit. And we know data is going to be the next oil for the next 2 decades in terms of organizational efficiencies improvement. So that is where we have started seeing this, Mark.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's interesting. You're the chief technical officer and the co-founder of Real Variable, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, good. So, I always like to meet fellow entrepreneurs, people that start up companies and things. It's always been a passion of mine. And as well, you being involved in technology, that's always been, also a passion of mine. Digital transformation, aviation, and entrepreneurship. Those are all really important things to me. So anyway, thanks for joining us today. I really, really appreciate that. And we're going to be digging into more and more details. Hey, let me recognize a few more people that have joined us. I always like to do that, and I'm going to be looking for questions as well. Like I said, we have Karthik, who's joined us from the UK. Welcome, Karthik. And then we have my business partner, Larry. Larry's out there in sunny Seattle, he says. Glad to have you with us, Larry. We have Abdullah joining us from Egypt. He's an aerospace engineer graduate. We recently connected on LinkedIn, and I appreciate you reaching out to me, Abdullah, and connecting with me. And then we have Deepak from India. Great, glad to have you with us. And remember, we're going to need questions. So let me just jump into the first segment of our broadcast here today, and we're going to break it up into 3 pieces. Number 1, we're going to talk a little bit about terminology, and then number 2, we're going to be talking about business cases, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some business cases. Let me tell you why we talk about terminology is because what I find is that until we understand our own terminology and what we're talking about, it's difficult for us to completely evaluate solutions and really understand what it is that we're looking at and why we should be considering implementing it or not considering implementing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about terminology, and by way of putting a little slide up here, I'm going to do that so that we can have a conversation about some of these things on this slide. So Gabe, on Monday we started out by talking about blockchain and what it means if something is decentralized or a distributed ledger. Could you maybe kick off our conversation by just giving a few words on what is something if it's decentralized, and what does it mean if something's a digital ledger?
Yeah, so when it comes to a decentralized blockchain network, no one has to know each other, so it's trustless. So the big part is that it's trustless, and each member has a copy of the exact same data. So across the network, everybody's got the exact same data, and if anything is altered, or if there's any sort of altercation in one of the members, so in somebody's network, then we can know right away it'll be rejected because everybody else has the exact same copy, right? So that's just the simple explanation of the decentralized blockchain network. But LV, is there anything else you want to add on that?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, apart from the immutability, also, you have the ability to, create the governance mechanism in terms of who can publish the data, who can consume the data, who can override some of the data. Right? When I say override means, add an additional record and then, correct certain records. So that also is part of, the decentralization process.
Yeah.
So, Gabe, I think next we were going to talk about some of the differences between a few of the different types of, blockchains. I think you might have had a question that you were going to throw out there.
Right. So we've got a private, public, and consortium. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Just because even sometimes I'm a little bit confused, and it helps when we've got somebody else's opinion.
Great. So I'll start with the private blockchains. Right? So private blockchains essentially are created by group of companies coming together, and then for their defined set of business processes, and then for their set of defined information exchanges, or the value exchange that they want to do across their ecosystem participation. So that is where we see the private blockchains, where there is always one organization saying that this is my network, and that I have the governance over this. Consortiums is where you see the consortiums like Mobi, and then a few others that are out there, which are in terms of beta, right? Blockchain in Travel Alliance. So these are the consortiums wherein the entire industry in a specific vertical or a specific business process comes together and say that let us create a network among ourselves, to be able to interact among ourselves and also with our business partners. And then there comes a set of standards, there comes a set of guidelines, there comes a set of governance in terms of whom can we add to our network, who should be participating in network, how do we govern this entire network. That's what is what we call it as consortium chains. Public chains, we all know, most of the public chains today are related to value exchange, not much about the information exchange. Probably it might change with the NFTs gaining a lot more popularity. But at this point of time, public chains are like, your Bitcoin network, Ethereum network, and then, most of the other networks that you see today, they're all public chains, which are predominantly for value exchange.
So LV, I think this is a really important point that I want to expand on. I want to make sure that I understand this because, Gabe, I agree with you. Sometimes these things are a bit confusing, okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to key in on a couple of things you just said, LV. You said that public blockchains are many times for value exchange. And so we might consider like value exchange, like the exchange of cryptocurrencies or exchange of Bitcoin or Ethereum or things like that, right? So public blockchains potentially, primarily for value exchange. I got it, okay. Private blockchains, you might find private blockchains being something where you have to join that blockchain in order to be able to exchange information like records or other elements that you're going to provide access to a closed group of individuals. Is that an accurate assessment?
That is a closed group of individuals or organizations.
Okay. And then when we go to consortium, right away, now I didn't completely understand this, not that long ago. But right away, what comes to mind is we have consortiums in the industry like CETA and IATA and Aero Exchange and things like that. And basically, they create, shared networks. Some of the big manufacturers, they do it as well. But right away, that kind of comes to mind. Is that the similar kind of concept where we would have, industry consortium? I can't use the word consortium in the description, but industry assembly of people and information to be able to share that information. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's an accurate assessment, but wherein in probably the way the current consortiums are managed is that they will have the general body meetings, they will have a lot of governance structures created, a lot of people attend and then vote and then gets recorded. But here in the consortiums on blockchain, all of that becomes as part of your blockchain interactions. It's part of the DOA, delegation authority, basically.
Got it. Okay, very good. All right, okay, let's keep moving. I'm going to recognize a few more people. I always like to do that. We have, let me see, let's see, it didn't come up here. There we have, we already recognized Deepak, and then we have Rob Brink coming to us from Amsterdam. Rob, thanks. We have Arturs. He's coming to us. Oh, he likes my background. Arturs is actually with Air Baltic, and we're going to have an interesting conversation here in the near future. Welcome, Arturs. And then we have some questions that have come up. We'll probably be jumping back on those in just a minute here. All right. Very good. Well, listen, let's continue on with our conversation about terminology, because I think this is an important part of the discussion so we understand. So let me kind of go around here a little bit. LV, maybe you can start with when we're talking about blockchain, we just talked a little bit about distributed ledgers, and we talked about some different aspects of that. We also talked a little bit about cryptographic transactions, so we know that value transactions are happening on the blockchain. Can you maybe add a little bit to the idea of a decentralized architecture? What is really the primary reason for having a decentralized architecture for anything?
Wonderful. So the decentralization is, taking away a decision-making authority with a particular organization or a particular individual, right? So today, let us suppose, just for the sake of example, Amazon, runs the reviews of the products that people buy. You really don't know, whether those reviews are paid reviews or whether those reviews are, obvious. But if the same product that you want to buy and you want to compare across different sites, you do not have any of that information available. You have to look at the marketplace A, marketplace B, marketplace C, because all of this information is in a centralized way. And in terms of making it decentralized, right? So how can you make the information decentralized so that not one single organization has the authority to say that I hold this information. It's a group of individuals, it's a group of computing, it's a group of servers, group of nodes, whatever you call it, right? They vote in terms of how this should be handled, who holds the information, who can see this information, who can share this information. So this is decentralization, is the decision making across different people participating in the network. That is what I see the decentralization coming in.
Yeah, and the fact that we sort of brought in the concept of consortium networks, that goes right into that. Is that actually Rena asked a question here. I'm going to throw up on the screen. Oops, you're out of the screen there. I'm going to have to put you back in there, LV, so we can see you. Good. Rena asked a question that says, is there any private or public established blockchain networks already created in aviation? And I'm just going to add to that real quick, and then maybe you can comment. But there are, in fact, efforts going, and there have been for quite some time. IATA, CETA, some other organizations are trying to create some standards, in that space. And there are, in fact, companies that are already implementing, public and private blockchain networks. And we're going to talk about some of those in coming weeks. But if we look at the major players in the industry, we of course have Real Variable that's brought, blockchains. We're going to talk to that. We have Microsoft. We have, all kinds of companies, IBM, many that are actually bringing blockchains, into aviation today. That's one of the reasons that we're addressing this because it's becoming so popular, so quickly. LV, what are you seeing as far as the proliferation of blockchain and private or public networks, in the industry today?
It has gained a lot of traction. We have one of our friends on the call, Sean Mark from Skythread. They're working on quite a beautiful solution, and there are other players who are working, like Block Aviation is one player which is working on these kind of solutions in Ireland. So quite a number of such efforts are coming up, and also there is we understand there is also some investments coming in from the existing consortia in terms of looking at the possible use cases, and then how do they bring in the current ecosystem into the consortia. But the use cases are huge, so everybody is attempting a part of the problem today in terms of aviation blockchains. They're not probably looking at the holistic picture yet.
Yeah. So maybe along that same lines, Gabe, you asked me a question, I think yesterday, that I couldn't completely answer. And you were asking me about, what types of blockchains were being used. This would be a perfect opportunity for you to, ask LV, about something in that lines, because, it goes right along with what Rena was asking. So.
Yeah. So we were trying to determine what blockchain that you guys were utilizing, and just curious on that question.
Yeah. So again, whenever you are talking about blockchains as well, right? So you have Turing complete, you have Turing incomplete chains. Mm-hmm. So any blockchain network, where you see the smart contracts can be utilized, those are Turing complete. Right. There are blockchain networks like multi-chain, which are not Turing complete because they do not have the smart contracts, but they have the ability of the distributed ledger. They do not have the decentralization part, right? So depending upon the use case, if a particular use case really needs decentralization, then you have to look at the blockchains which have the ability for smart contracts. So those become your Ethereum, your Quorum, your Hyperledger Fabric, and then these are some of the prevalent ones that are there. And then there are things like Cardano coming, Solana is there, and then a lot of other chains are coming. And when you talk about the machine to machine communication, right? So there are also a lot of use cases coming in terms of machine as a service. So there you see the likes of IOTA picking up, and you also see now the consensus like Tendermint picking up, in terms of looking at cross blockchain interactions. So these are some of the blockchains that we normally use in our implementations with our customers. And anywhere.
No, go ahead, Avi. Yeah.
Yeah, if anything about at this point of time, the most stable and then the blockchain technology that is investing in create B2B is Ethereum. So we are excited to see what Ethereum is going to bring to the table on the B2B in the next maybe couple of years.
Well, that's a good question. So basically, are there more implementations on Ethereum than any other network, or do I just make that assumption? Or blockchain? Is that accurate or not?
Most of the private networks are going into Corda, Quorum, and Fabric. If there is a public network interaction that is required, then 80% of the cases it is Ethereum now.
Okay. So listen, you brought up a couple of terms. I always like to define terms so that people understand. You brought up the word smart contracts, and you said not all blockchains use smart contracts. Can you please explain what is a smart contract and why does a blockchain use it and why does it not use it?
I'll try to put it in business language, Mark, right? So today, let us suppose I am making a payment, from my company to another company, right? And when I make the payment, I will have certain rules on my ERP or on my system that I use, and then I will have to send that information back to the other company, which is the receiver, right? Saying that hey, I paid you this. So until they reconcile, nothing gets done. But rather, what I can do is, I can write a network, I can write a business rule on the network itself that says that if this condition is met, this payment has to be released, this should be the receiver, right? So as soon as that condition is met, as soon as that, I approve a particular receipt of good or service, then, the smart contract, through the smart contract, which has, let us say, certain tokens or, certain monetary value in the wallet, that amount can be automatically triggered to the receiver's address or the receiver's wallet. So that way there is no bureaucracy that is involved, and then on the both sides. So smart contracts are event-based triggers. So on meeting a certain condition, another action has to happen. That is what for me a definition of a smart contract is.
But not all blockchains have smart contract capability.
Not necessarily.
Okay, good, very good. So it's important then as people move forward then for us to understand that more. We're not going to get into that level of detail here today, but understanding the appropriate blockchain and why you would use it or why you wouldn't use it is an interesting conversation. I did bring up earlier in the broadcast today that I saw in the news just a couple of days ago that LexisNexis which, if you don't know, is an information company, provides information in a lot of different areas, legal and other areas, is implementing a blockchain information service for schedule information, for network information in the airlines. And I noticed that they were using Ethereum and Chainlink nodes. Okay, why would they do that? I don't understand. I don't understand networks well enough to know why you would choose something like that.
Most of this information is public. If it is about the aircraft schedules, right? It is a public, and Chainlink allows you to have the information shared across multiple chains. So which means that as an airline, I can be running a different blockchain network. As another airline, I can be running a different blockchain network. But using this process and then publishing this on the Ethereum, then you have all of this information in a way that is coming onto Ethereum. From Ethereum, there can be many people who can consume this information, so that they can pay for this information and consume, right? So that is the reason they have gone for that, so that there is an authenticity, there is a contract that can be executed every time the information is consumed.
Very good, very good. Thank you for answering that. So we answered that one question. We kind of went off in a direction there when Rena asked about public and private networks. But I like to continue to answer people's questions, because that's really the most interesting to people, is when we answer their questions. But we also have a few other people that have joined us. We have Abdullah joining us from Aramco in Saudi. Welcome. I'm glad to have you with us. But then I have a question from Sven here, which I wanted to address, because I think this is a really good question. Okay, is that LV is out of my picture again. I'll try to get him back in here. There we go. We're all covered up by that big question. Sven says there's been quite some initial blockchain excitement in our industry a few years back, and then it was followed by a quiet period. It appears that business to business, non-finance, seems like it's returning now with customers asking for blockchain use cases, decentralization, immutability, and things like that. It's not exclusive to blockchain. So I had this conversation with another gentleman who provides a record solution in the industry, and he was debating with me whether we really needed blockchain or not. Okay, now that's about 4 different questions asked there, Sven. So I'm going to answer a couple of them. All right, I have an opinion. Is that blockchain was new? 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I didn't even understand what it was, and I started exploring it about 3 years ago. And it became popular, and people wanted to start looking at it. But frankly, the technologies were continuing to mature. And frankly, people thought, oh, blockchain, that's cryptocurrency. What are we even talking about that for? And then I saw somebody addressing it in terms of digital twins, where they were building up digital twins. And then over the last couple of years, it's become more and more mature. And my opinion is that in the last couple of years, when we've all focused more on digital and digital transformation, and the technology has continued to mature, people have paid a little bit more attention to it. They're starting to understand the value of it and understanding where it may or may not be able to be used. But LV, I wanted to ask you a question or an opinion, is that a lot of people ask me, well, yeah, but you can do those things with other applications. I can use a database with an API and exchange messages, just like you can exchange a smart contract on a blockchain. Can you help explain why maybe you may or may not want to use a blockchain solution?
Sure, Mark. So just extending on your thought, right? So in our experience, last 4 years, right, the first couple of years is mostly education to most of the C-level people and the IT managers, and what is blockchain about? How is it relevant to the industry? And we also have to consider the fact that most of these companies run budgets for 3 years, right? So it's not just that there is a new technology available in the market, let's jump and do something about it. Most of the companies have invested on great amounts on the proof of concepts and what they think is the right use case for them, and then they have vetted it, and now they are going into a full-fledged implementations on the successful POCs. That is the reason there was a lot of excitement. People have started, then they tried what needs to be done, they looked at it, and now industry is settling in terms of, okay, this is what I want, this is where I want to use the blockchain. The second part of it, right? I'll answer your question, like whether I would use blockchain or not. But the second part of the question is decentralization and immutability unique to blockchain? No, it is not unique to blockchain. You can achieve decentralization, you can achieve immutability in a number of ways, but is it cost effective? We see that the decentralization and immutability using blockchain is very, very cost effective. That is where, like, those two have become, words that are to reckon with, when we say blockchain in the B2B scenarios, right? In terms of whether I would use blockchain or not for a specific use case, right? Very, very clear. If there is a multi-party collaboration involved, and if you need the data from the network, not that, you need to bring the data from, multiple participants, dump it into your data lake, dump it into your data warehouse, and then, create actionable intelligence out of it, the time runs out, right? But if you need the source of truth giving you the information over a network where, that information is something that you can trust and you can use, that is the place where, I will see B2B blockchains, being more and more, coming up.
So LB, I'm really glad that Sven asked that question, because we actually do have a couple of slides, because I'm going to drill down into the next level of detail where we're going to talk a little bit about where you would use it and maybe where you wouldn't use it. And LV provided us a couple of slides which maybe help us to begin to uncover that or understand that a little bit better. And in this particular first slide, we're talking about manufacturing, all right, and an OEM. You see in the center here of the slide, there's an OEM. And it basically describes the as-is process, where we're using EDI and electronic data interfaces, from different sources to be able to send information to a common source or to an original equipment manufacturer. And that's, it's a lot of the way things are really done today. So when we talk about tier 2 suppliers or tier 1 suppliers, we're talking about a very large, vast network of people that have to provide information that needs to be accessed by a common OEM, like by Boeing or by Airbus or by anybody. And in order for us to know the status of parts and materials, in their supply chain, that information has to be provided. Now, in many, many cases, we all know that supply chain and logistics, it's absolutely impossible to find an accurate status of where things are and what's going on. And that's much of what happens today. Now, I'm going to jump to the next slide. And LB, I'm going to let you answer this, is that in a blockchain world, how would this be different?
Instead of the suppliers sending the information to their next level, tier 2 sending the information to the next level, and the tier 1 sending that information to the OEM, when tier 2 is publishing the information, they say that, this is the information that I'm sharing with tier 1. By the way, out of these, 10 attributes, 5 attributes are related and are to be visible to the OEM. So which means that as soon as that information set is published, whichever records that are required to be seen by the OEM will have an immediate visibility of those records, visibility of that information. So this way, what happens is that, the time spent in terms of, like, having the information hops is completely cut down. And also the possibility of, like, editing or deleting or modifying any of those records also is taken out, right? In an otherwise scenario, Mark, it's very, very common that we know that, OEM calls up the tier 1 and say, when is my part getting delivered? It could be an MTO. And then, when most of the times that we see today's manufacturing is mostly make to order, right? If they're high value goods. And in this scenario, every tier 1 knows that, this is the order that I received from the OEM, and this is the corresponding, demand that I have passed on to the tier 2s, right? So instead of, having the tier 1 collate this information and then pass it back, you publish to the network. When publishing the network, you decide that, this information needs to be visible to so and so. It automatically is visible to everybody on the network.
So LV, maybe I'll come back and ask a follow-up question by means of somebody asked a question, and it's very appropriate to what you're talking about right now. And so you've talked about having a common place where information can be published to and shared on the blockchain. Okay. Now this question, it's not exactly what I was thinking, but it sort of will take us to the next step. The question is from Ishmael, is that how can we transfer our old customer data to blockchain servers? All right. I'm going to ask you to answer that in a 2-part question. Is that we have existing data that exists out there today, all right? And what about the difficulty of onboarding suppliers, into that kind of a network? So number one, how do we transfer old data onto a blockchain server? And why is using a blockchain any different than just doing it and putting it into a data lake or anything like that?
Sure. So again, when you're trying to look at transferring the old data to the blockchain, we strongly suggest not to do it, because you always take the latest snapshot in terms of whatever is the data set that you have, and then publish that data set as your genesis, as your starting point, so that rest of the records can go from there. Because moving the historic data into blockchain really does not make a lot of sense, right? The second aspect of that, Mark, to your question, can I just use it using a database? Can I just do it using a data lake? Yeah, you can do it. I mean, the organization, the tier 2 supplier can have their own database, tier 1 can have their own database, they can do the APIs, and then they can send this information to whomsoever is required. But what is the amount of work that is involved, if you have to change one piece of that information? Like, 4 different organizations have to work together and then have to change. But in the blockchain parlance, each node communicates with each other using the peer-to-peer communication. And also, you write the smart contracts in terms of what data can be shared with who. So it is the change to the contract in the network, rather than 4 different parties have to change 4 different pieces of code, 4 different releases that they have to make, and then wait a year before everybody makes the changes. So that is where we see a lot of value coming in terms of the business networks using the smart contracts, information publishing, and information sharing.
So, LB, I just want to ask some hard questions, because people ask me these things. Okay, you might have a service bus or something like that in the past that actually would provide easier interchange, where you provide a middleware layer where you communicate to that, and then everybody communicates to the middleware layer. So this isn't a new concept, right? The question people ask me is that why is it any different with blockchain? Why is it easier to onboard, or why is it different about sharing data? Because we have enterprise service buses and things like that today. So how is using a blockchain any easier or better than what we currently do today?
Absolutely. So when you're talking about a middleware, it is just the information exchange layer. It is not an information persistence layer. What I mean that it does not store information, right? When it comes to blockchain, there are 2-3 ways that you can implement the blockchain. One is you're sharing a set of information, let us say, which is about 20 different attributes, but you can identify the key attributes and say that this is my reference, and rest of the information is in a private contract, let us say, right, on the blockchain itself, or a private collection. Then what you can also have is you can have the entire information in the blockchain, in the consortium network or on the private network, right? So that way, what you can do is you will be able to have this information from the same layer, which is also communicating with the rest of the parties, rather than having this in some database and then using the service bus. What happens if the record is modified in the database? Like, one record has been accessed by you, but then they go and change that record, whatever is the reason, right? But you have a copy of the record, which is the previous record. The changed record is not communicated to you. Then you already start seeing the differences here, right? What if this database is lost, which has sent this information, and then you want some information again? They say we don't have a record. What will you do, right? So these are all the cases where organizations are looking at how do I create a persistence layer, where I can easily and seamlessly transfer information and transfer value.
Yeah, I really like that explanation. I think that makes really good sense. Thank you, LB. That makes good sense. Hey, listen, we have another question. Well, it's actually a comment here. I'm going to put it up though. A comment from Shivam, and he brings up a really good point. Is that we have a couple of challenges in front of us, and one of them that he brings up is basically bridging. I'm abbreviating his question here. Is that we have different blockchains, and we have to bridge across them. I wonder if you couldn't maybe address that. When we have all the different blockchains that exist out there today, how do we really deal with the challenge of bridging across different blockchains?
There are a number of cross-chain solutions that have come in, right? I really don't want to go into the technicality in this session, but quite a number of cross-chains applications, like Chainlink is one of those applications, Smart, which you just mentioned, right? So there's a solution for us to connect to multiple protocols or multiple blockchain networks. When a non-blockchain participant wants to work in the blockchain, there are also solutions for that. There are solutions where you can implement the digital signatures. There are also solutions where you can implement the verified credentials, dates, and then quite a lot of interesting stuff has come there as well. So, and many of our customers also uses quite a lot of these things today in terms of non-blockchain participants as well. For the non-blockchain participants, it is still a service call, but we see that there is a possibility that in the near future they will join the network and they'll be able to communicate. That is when all of these signatures will help in terms of their trust establishment in the past.
Yeah. So LV, in a somewhat related question, we had a question on Monday that we didn't get around to answering. Gabriel, do you remember that question? It was about NFTs. Somebody asked us about 2 different kinds of NFTs. What was that again? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was about DNFTs, right? And then soulbound as well. Do you know? Can you tell us anything about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, soulbound is a very, very interesting concept, right? So SBD, that's what they call. I think this is coined very recently by Vitalik, and I am sure if that comes into the mind of the Ethereum, people, it will become a reality somehow. But ideally, SBD is a non-exchangeable token. It is a representation of an individual self or an entity or an asset, right? So what does it mean, right? So my soulbound token for LV will have my date of birth, my vaccine record, can have my vaccine record, and also when I graduated from the university can sign my SBD so that it is there. When I do it, when I give a certain exam, somewhere, when I take a certain certificate from somewhere, they can sign that this person has achieved this certificate. So this is a representation of an individual and all the accolades, achievements, and then whatever the individual has achieved during the time is something that which is part of the SBT, right? Then you have the DNFT. DNFT is another very interesting concept, wherein it is the NFTs across chains. It is still far-fetched. A lot of uptake has to happen, for NFTs to come into the picture. But I think that is another 5 years before we see some traction on the NFT, because people are still struggling on creating the interoperability between chains on the normal blockchains for good NFTs.
Yeah, all really good questions that you guys are asking, and continue to ask your questions. And if we can't get to them today, we actually will answer them in future sessions. Hey, somebody asked me, why are you doing 8 weeks worth of discussions on blockchain, 24 episodes? And the reason we're doing that is because there is absolutely, so much information that we actually talk about. And so, we're going to be covering a lot of these different things as we go forward, and we're going to be answering as many questions as what you guys, can give us. And so I wanted to encourage you to continue to submit your questions to us, and we will continue to answer your questions. And if we can't answer them this week, we'll answer them next week. I wanted to jump to another slide here real quick, and I just wanted to point out that we have yet one other use case, and that use case pertains to the use of records. That's actually a very popular one. And when we look at the use of records, records becomes a situation where we're wanting to go out and keep a historical documentation of some particular item. For example, in aircraft, that we have configuration control and we have aircraft records, and all those things are extremely important. And LV, the question I wanted to ask you is that if we're looking at the idea of records and record keeping, how is it that a blockchain might assist us in better managing records or maintaining security, or what are the attributes around maintaining records on a blockchain?
Yes, so blockchains today, if you see, there is information that you can publish to the blockchain, with certain hashes, and then relate it back, into the collections with that hashes, or whatever is the cryptographic mechanism that is used today, right? The same way, you could also publish the documents with the specific metadata or specific identifiers, and these documents can be on a distributed file storage, which is associated with these blockchains. So there are quite a few implementations like IPFS, which is interplanetary file storage, or Filecoin, or certain other implementations that have come to be able to use the records management on blockchain as well. So you would not think that the entire, let us say, PDF or an Excel or a spec standard is actually stored on the blockchain. No, the hash of it is stored on the blockchain, and the actual copy is on a distributed ledger, on a distributed file system, which can be taken out. So it is not in some central server with somebody, but it is on the distributed file system.
Yeah, Gabe has tried to explain to me many different times that cryptocurrency, when we look at that, is that in last week's program, or on Monday's program, Gabe talked a bit about a wallet and cryptocurrency, and how the wallet, the wallet only contains the record of the crypto. Is that correct? How does
right? Because it's on the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So the actual crypto is on all the information is on the blockchain, not technically in the wallet.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right. So how does that relate to a record then being, LV being on the blockchain and people accessing that? Then is there a similarity between those two things, or?
Very much similar. Very much similar. See, a wallet is a representation of one particular identity on on the blockchain network, and anything associated with that particular wallet is with that identity, right? Similarly, every record that you store has a unique identity, and that unique identity is linked back, to the document.
Very good, very good. Well, listen, you guys have asked a lot of really good questions, and we've been going now for 45 minutes. If you have any other questions, you can put them up while I talk about next week. But in summary of talking about the use cases for the business cases for blockchain, when we look at Real Variable. Real Variable has focused on a few key areas. They've focused on supply chain, part track and trace, warranties, contracts, provenance, and history, and providing actionable information surrounding those things. And so, LV, just give me one little bit of information. Is that we're going to do a detailed product showcase in a few weeks about Real Variable, but give people a quick view on how blockchain fits into this ecosystem and providing these things that are on the screen here right now.
Absolutely. Warranty contracts. Today, if you see, the manufacturers pay warranties to the dealers or customers, but when they have to recover from their suppliers, it becomes a huge task to prove quite a number of things, right? So that is where, the smart contracts and comes in the warranty for the warranty recovery from the suppliers. Provenance is, another important aspect in terms of, proving a certain thing, whether it is sustainability, whether it is country of origin, whether it is certificate of conduct, anything that is related to the provenance, right? Actionable information, like we said, a airframe manufacturer would require production schedule of the tier 3 supplier. If the tier 3 supplier does not produce the part in the specified time, the airframe will get delayed. So that is the actionable information that comes through the blockchain, through the digital trust layer. Parts track and trace is another huge area where a lot of organizations are investing in terms of just understanding where the part is. There are many modes of shipments there. And supply chain, again, people are looking at how do I optimize inventory, how do I optimize operations, but being able to consume the information from the data network rather than creating their own siloed lakes or warehouses.
So, LV, I'd like to add one thing to this, is that every single day we see more information on the news about delays, cancellations. And they come from a lot of different places. They come from labor efficiencies. They come from parts and materials inefficiencies. They come from weather. A lot of different reasons that there are delays and cancellations in the industry. As a matter of fact, yesterday, the Heathrow Airport Authority, they said, stop selling tickets into Heathrow for the summer. We can't take any more passengers. And so our system is so stressed, and there are so many factors that are affecting it, that we have to find ways to optimize it. And I have continually said to people that we can provide relief in our systems through digital transformation. And you go, well, what are you saying? That's just something you like, all right? You like digital. Yes, I like digital, but I happen to know the value of it. And I've actually done implementations where I've seen 10%, 25%, 45%, 90% improvement in certain aspects of efficiency. And what we find is that we can introduce tremendous efficiencies in the system. And when you have a system that's breaking, we need to find ways to be able to improve that. If you can't go hire 100 people to fix the problem, why not optimize the environment by putting different digital solutions in place to be able to help provide relief? So I'm going to leave it at that and say that digital and digital transformation, including blockchain and aviation, are aspects that are going to provide us some tremendous efficiencies in our operation. And we're going to be looking forward, LV, to hearing more about Real Variable in a couple of weeks. Listen, I want to address what's happening on Friday before we sign off here. And on Friday, we're actually going to talk about cryptocurrency. And you might ask yourself, well, why are we talking about cryptocurrency in the context of aviation? Right? Well, number one, it's a blockchain technology. Gabe, you like cryptocurrency, right? Isn't that a passion of yours?
It is.
Gabe got me into looking at cryptocurrency, and what you'll find out is that there are airlines today that are beginning to take cryptocurrency already. And so we need to understand cryptocurrency, how it fits into the market, how it fits onto blockchains. And Friday, I have an expert who spent 20 plus years in foreign exchange, and then the last, I think he's 5 or 7 years into exchange of cryptocurrency. And he's going to help us get some really solid insights into what's happening in the cryptocurrency market and how we can better understand that. Okay. Now, as we wrap up this segment about blockchain, LV, I just wanted to ask you this: is that what is the most exciting to you about blockchain and aviation today with respect to your business?
The most interesting or the most exciting thing for us is the supplier collaboration. Some of these airlines have 11,000 plus suppliers, who supply quite a number of products. That's a huge opportunity to unlock a lot of efficiencies. And on top of it, we also want to look at, how can we implement the warranties and warranty recoveries, from this ecosystem. That is what is most exciting for us.
Yeah, tremendous opportunity, because there's so much cost impact, because of parts and materials, and from warranties. I've seen it personally in looking at different aspects of the industry. LV, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate you're giving us some of your time and your knowledge, and sharing it with all the people that are out there watching today.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Gabriel, and thanks to everybody who dialed in and then listened to this. Thank you.
Yeah. So as we begin to wrap things up, I just wanted to say that I still have the ability to capture your questions. And if you have questions, you can submit them in the comments. Please do that, and I would really appreciate it. And remember, for 7 more weeks after this week, we are actually having live broadcasts on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it's at 12 Eastern Time, 1600 GMT. Mondays, we're looking at Ideation Mondays. We're looking at what are new ideas in the industry. How is blockchain being used? How is Web3 being used? What are the benefits? Wednesdays, we're looking at business cases and actual usage of these things. And on Fridays, we're actually going to be doing product showcases where we're going to look at specific products and how they're being implemented within the industry. I want to really encourage you to join. And I will be providing the ability to access these things recorded. And you can access them on most major social media channels: LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. I actually have this broadcasted on Twitch, even though I'm not a Twitch user. And it's also available within 24 hours on every major podcast as an audio. Episode number 1 was put out Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, and you can access those in audio. So we're really hoping that we can help you to better understand blockchain and better understand its application with the industry, and that we can work out our passions. Thanks for joining today, LV and Gabriel. I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
That's good. That's great. Thanks, guys. And I want to say goodbye for now. Fair winds and following seas. Submit your questions, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday at the